Governor O'Malley is joining us now live with an assessment on how the state is responding to the storm. Governor, we're told that local governments have no unmet needs at the moment, so things seem to be going fairly well.
Yeah, things have gone fairly well, David, through this preparation phase, but we're only now getting walloped by this storm. I mean, for example, if you look at the map back there, you can see on the western shore the number of electrical outages have really jumped just in the last 1 hour. I think we're up to 280,000 people without electricity. That's up from about 171,000 just about an hour ago. So we're only now getting walloped by this storm, so this is the critical time.
And you made the point, a reasonable point, that it will come a time when the workers have to take shelter.
Well, that's right. Both our first responders, our police, our state police, and also our highway crews who would be out there clearing the roads. They can't do that right now because there's too much debris flying around. Similarly, the people with BGE, the crews with Pepcos, all of them have to be pulled back in until this storm passes us. So those numbers on the electrical outages, they're going to continue to climb until the storm has passed us and we can get back out there.
Now, there are a number of factors to the storm, obviously. The National Weather Service is telling us 6 to some places a foot of rain. And you've got creeks, you've got rivers, you've got streams that could swell up, plus you got a base surge. Which is more of a concern, flooding from those entities or a base surge?
I think the bigger concern is, well, of course, on the coast. That's a huge concern in Ocean City. But in terms of within the bay, I think the bigger problem is not with the surge, but with the streams and the creeks overflowing. I think the shift of the winds will be such that it might actually create kind of a reverse tidal effect. In other words, but those streams are receiving a lot of rain. St. Mary's, about an hour ago, had received 7 inches of rain just in the last 8 hours.
Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown was talking about the Maryland National Guard deployment, and he mentioned 400 guardsmen are in a preemptive mode in 23 different areas of the state. What resources does the Guard have to respond?
Well, the most precious resource that they have to respond is those Humvees. Their ability for those large vehicles to be able to go and get the paramedic to somebody that's in need, or to be able to transport your police officers to where they need to be. So those Humvees become very, very valuable commodities, very valuable assets for mayors in places like Crisfield and other towns that will be hard hit and flooded.
Now, I was talking to Lieutenant Colonel Charles Kohler, and he says, in years past, the Guard was seen as a last resort, and now people are thinking, wait a minute, we got to put in an advance request for the Guard to get them, in our area sooner than later. So it's not a bad thing.
Well, the Guard is an essential force for protecting the homeland. And since 9/11, I think we've all started to look at the Guard differently than perhaps we did in the past. And this approach where we integrate the Guard along with our first responders, I mean, that's the way we have to go. They're a great dedicated group of human beings, and supported as we are by FEMA here as well. It's a very, very good organization that we have out there, and we'll be sweeping into those hard-hit areas just as soon as we're able.
I'm glad you mentioned FEMA. How important is it? They're actually here. It's not like a phone call.
Yeah, they've been terrific. They are 1,000% improved on where they were 4 years ago after the embarrassment of Katrina and all of that. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, Secretary Napolitano, the President was actually on a conference call and video conference with all of the governors on the East Coast state. So FEMA is so much more involved on the front end. They used to be the sort of agency you'd think about calling only after you were totally smashed, and maybe they'd come in a week later. Now FEMA's right there up front with us, co-located here. They've been great.
And one last thing about federal resources. You mentioned yesterday during one of the press briefings that there's now, I think you called it a dual hat between the U.S. military and the National Guard. What is that?
Well, we recall during Katrina when there was so much confusion, when the local forces, the state of Louisiana and also the city of New Orleans was overwhelmed, and the thought was, well, just send in federal troops. Well, our country has an aversion to sending in federal troops, and when we send them in, we don't generally like for them to be commanded by generals that are appointed by the governors. And so an arrangement's been worked out with all of of the governors and the Obama administration and the Department of Defense to appoint a general who will be dual-hatted, that is to say, is qualified, is trained, can command the combined force of the National Guard and the federal forces, should they have to come in. This was the first time we've ever made that designation, and it was of General Solomon, who is our Air Guard general.
When this is all said and done, hopefully before dawn tomorrow, if the projections are correct, how will you assess the damage?
Well, we'll immediately have Richard Muth up in a helicopter and assessing it. I may well go with him at that time, and I may not. I don't know. We'll wait and see. But from the air is the quickest way to do it. And also, we have cameras mounted in now a lot of vehicles that are on the shore, and they will be beaming back pictures to us. So we'll get an assessment both ways.
Thank you very much. Governor Martin O'Malley taking time out with us at MEMA headquarters.